Hello developers and welcome back. It's been a while since we made a video, right? Today we're diving into a super common coding challenge, which is basically checking for bracket sequences. Whether you're preparing for interviews or you're just sharpening your programming or problem solving skills, this one is definitely a must know. Let's break it down step by step and solve it using JavaScript and TypeScript. So we are going to be looking at the string parser, and here is the coding challenge, right? You're given a string that contains only characters, as you can see on the screen, and your task is to determine whether it forms a valid bracket sequence. And a string will be valid if every open bracket is closed by the same type and the brackets close in the correct order. So it's not just about closing like other brackets closing out, but it has to be in a specific or in the same order. Now, I'll give an example of what a valid value will be. Something like you see on your screen. If you notice that we have the open bracket here and the closing bracket here, it's of the same type, the same way that you have it at the beginning here and you have it at the end here. And you find that you have the open and closing brackets of the same type in, say, a specific position. And an invalid value will be something like this. If you notice the open and closing do not match and they're not in the same order. So we'll solve this using a very classic data structure, which is known as the stack. And an illustration of this is what you can see on your screen. We have, imagine a stack of books. In this case, I don't know why I choose to use a test tube. And you can push values into that, right? And then you can pop up one value after the other, and you're going to pop up the most or the recently added value. So a quick demonstration of what the plan is going to be is that we're going to create a stack to keep track of all the open brackets, and then we'll use a map to match each closing bracket to its corresponding opening bracket. So closing bracket, sorry about that. And then we will loop through each of the characters of the string. If it's an open bracket, then we'll push it onto our stack. And if it's a closing bracket, we're going to pop that out of the stack and check if it matches the opening brackets. Okay. So in order to determine if a string is valid, we will check at the end to see that our stack is currently empty. So without much chit chat, as we usually say, let's hop into code and let's see how we can solve this. First video we're making for the coding challenges, we're going to create a base structure for the future videos that we're going to make. So we're going to say make the R ex01, and then we'll cd into that, and we're going to do a basic npm init -y. And once we have this, we're going to basically just do so we're going to install our dependencies, right? So npm I typescript, we need ts node, and we need node mon. So once we have our dependencies installed, we're going to do a tsc -init. This is to create our tsconfig file, and then we'll do a code space dot, and this will be to launch CodeMon. I have CodeMon on this other screen. I'm going to bring this to the side. I'm going to do Control Shift and then the backslash, ensure that we have a terminal at the bottom. And then we're going to create an src folder. And inside that folder, we're going to do index.ts. You're using JavaScript, that is completely fine. And then I just want to have this basic structure in our package.json. So what we're basically doing is that we have a dev script, which is basically running nodemon and saying we want to execute it using node. And then we're moving into src folder and running the index.ts file. So let's do an npm run dev just to ensure that we're able to run our index.ts file. And before we do that, let's come in here and let's do a clg, which is a console log. And we are going to say, we're going to call it string parser n, and then let's run our dev script, and we should definitely see string parser. So we're going to create a function, and we'll name that function is valid bracket sequence. and it's going to take in an input of type string. Now, if you're not using TypeScript for this, you don't have to define the types. And we're going to move forward to bringing in our constant variable, which is basically our stack, where we're going to stack in the characters as we move through the loop based on specific logic. We're going to have a map which basically maps the closing brackets against the opening brackets. We're going to have a list of the open brackets that we're interested in, and we're going to have a point of interest. It's basically going to be, all the characters that we're interested in checking the values for. That means that if you include some other value like an S or a K or whatever character, it should return a false, because that obviously would not be a valid bracket sequence. So we can do, let's do a for loop. So say for const of input. And what we basically do is we'll do a little bit of defensive coding, right? So say if our character is not included in our point of interest, we're just going to do a return false statement here. The next thing we're going to do is that we'll check if a character is found in our open brackets. So if openbr includes our character, right? So if that is found in our open brackets, what we want to do is a stack.push, and we want to add that to our stack. Now the next thing we want to do is we'll have an else if statement, and what we're just checking is if that character is found in our map, right? And we do that, and then insert here, we want to now get that value from the stack, check if it has a mapping, or there's a mapping for that as well. So we do an if stack.pop, which basically takes the most recent added character. If that is not equals to a map of that specific character, we also return a false statement here. Remember that we said that our string is valid if at the end our stack is empty or the length is equals to 0. If you've arrived at this point of the video, then I guess you're definitely enjoying it, right? Please subscribe, like, and leave a comment below. Let's get back in, and again, let's get cracking. So after our for loop, all we do is do a return statement of stack.length to ensure that it is equals to 0. So if the length of our stack is 0, then this will return a true statement. So what we're going to do is let's do a little bit of analysis of our code. So we're going to have something like this just to do an analysis, and obviously this should return true. And let's save that. Let's run our dev server, and this should return true. So let's analyze this properly. So what this does is that it goes through the first loop. Let's comment this out. And in the first loop, we have a character of this, which is basically this, right? And then it comes to our point of interest, or at this line of code. And yes, it is part of that. And then it moves on to the next sequence of strings. So let's do a quick test to verify that particular edge case. Let's pass in a value that we're sure is not in our point of interest. Let's say an F. And if we do a save, this should return false because it comes to this line of code, and voila, it is not part of our point of interest and just returns a false statement. So what happens is, okay, this test has passed. It now moves to this line of code. Now, is this current character part of our open bracket? The answer is yes. So in that case, it then comes to this line of code, adds that to our stack, and then goes to the next loop. And now in the next loop, which is what we're going to analyze at this point, we now have the second character, which is this value here. Is it in our point of interest? The answer is yes. Is it an open bracket, which means this line of code? No. So it comes to the else if statement, and then it checks our open bracket. Does it have a map, or closing brackets rather? Does it have a mapping, which is this? It has a mapping. It now comes to this line of code. It pops out the value which is currently in our stack, which is the previous value, which is this. And then it now checks the mapping to this value here. And so this will obviously be true, and then it now goes to the next loop. And when it goes to the next loop, now our stack now is, empty at that point. I'm just going to paste in some code that will describe the third and fourth loop, and this is what you will get. And once that has gone through the loop, like we said, at the end of the loop, we expect our stack to be of length 0, and that should return a true statement. So let's do some test cases, for instance, and let's paste in a couple of test cases. So by default, we expect this to return true. We expect this to return true as well, and the last two to return a false statement. So if we save this code and run it, we should get true, true, false, and false. Now go ahead and play around with the code, see what you can come up with, and then feel free to leave a comment down in the comment section of what you found. And if you find something interesting that you'd like to share, do as well to mention that in the comment section. Now let's do a quick recap. We've learned how to manage stacks, or how to use stacks and manage nested structures. We've also learned how to match pairs using a dictionary. We've also learned how to handle edge cases like wrong orders or mismatched brackets. Now, this technique is super useful, not just in interviews, but also in real examples like syntax matching, compilers, and expression evaluators. Now, if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up, comment below with your questions or suggestions for things or future videos, and don't forget to subscribe for more hands-on coding tutorials. Thanks for watching, and happy coding.